Glad to have you back. It's the Business Daily right here on Trust Television. Now we go into our discussion for the day. Like we told you earlier, the Monetary Policy Committee yesterday raised the interest rates by 50 basis points. That is now stand at 18.50%. That is additional 50 basis points that was added to MPR yesterday. And of course, GDP numbers were also released yesterday by the National Bureau of Statistics, and it shows that the non-oil sector contributed the last chunk of the GDP, that is close over 94%, 93.97% as it were, while the non-oil sector contributed only 6.21%. So we go into our discussion this morning. I have joining me right here in the studio a business consultant and, of course, a public affairs analyst, Mr. Wilson Agaba. Glad to have you on Business Daily.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, let's get your immediate reaction to the MPR, monetary policy rate that was raised yesterday. That has been consistent for a very long time. According to the CBN, it is to control inflation, but it seems that is not working.
Well, you know, this has been going on for a long time. I think it's close to 2 or 3 years now. We have consistently increased MPR from about 12-point-something% down to 18% as it is now, and it doesn't seem to be changing things. You know, when the cash swap policy was raised, some of us thought that this could help complement the MPR, because if you're raising MPR and it doesn't seem to be helping inflation, then there's something wrong. And I proposed then that it could be that a huge amount of our currencies are not within the financial system. MPR controls the financial system. So if you raise MPR, it means you're raising the cost of borrowing, which means banks will now raise their interest rate at which they borrow to people. Now, what that will do is that for me as an individual, it will discourage me from borrowing to spend. And if I don't spend, it means organization who sells to me will not have the motivation to also increase price maybe. So with time, all of these things will start crashing down prices of products within the market. But there's also a flip side of it. It will discourage investment because the cost of capital would have gone up, and no organization wants to embark on new operation or expand their operation, knowing fully well that they are going to borrow at a high cost, and consumers are most likely going to have lower spending power.
So now, what is the implication of it? Because the ripple effect now will trickle down to the ordinary Nigerians. Because when the MPR is high, like you rightly explained, the cost of borrowing will go up. And of course, when people borrow at a very high cost, they transfer that cost down to ordinary people. What does this mean for an economy that is, hoping to achieve growth?
For me, I think that the CBN and the MPC, they are using economic textbooks to make this decision. And I believe that a time has come for us to conduct our own research and see if this existing theory still apply to us. Because the increasing MPR have two mixing impact on the economy. On the one side, it can help stabilize your exchange rate. It can also help curb inflation. But it can also stimulate inflation. How? If companies who needs to borrow money to produce more do not borrow money because it's too costly.
Just to interject you there, you would say this to help you to moderate inflation, that's some of the reason that CBN giving it, also control exchange rate. But from what we are seeing, the CBN effort has not achieved any of that. Then just to give you some of the reason the CBN gave yesterday, they say one is to consolidate the gains made so far. I'm yet to see the gain. You may have to tell us some of the gain. Then to support effort towards moderating demand pull inflation. Inflation is on the rise. And of course, narrow the negative real interest rate gap. And of course, finally, say boost the MPC credibility. These are some of the reasons given by the CBN governor yesterday.
Well, He has to give reasons. But for me, for instance, I don't think our exchange rate is stabilized. I don't see a stabilized
quite a whole lot of volatility. There multiple exchange rate windows.
We have multiple exchange rates. The inflation is still skyrocketing. Our statistic is very conservative at reporting the inflation rate. If you look at the consumption, the inflation on the things we consume every day, what you buy 1,000 naira today, go there in a week time is 1,500 naira.
Absolutely.
Those things are going up. And then you want to control demand pool inflation.
Absolutely.
Demand pool inflation controlled by, well, for me, he is the expert. He is a better expert than me. That's why he's a CBN governor, and I am not.
Is he economical with the truth?
But I think from a professional point of view that he's been economical with the truth. I think that these things are not working.
That's your opinion anyway. My own is, my job is to ask questions.
You sold the opinion
to me. My job is to ask questions.
You sold the opinion to me. No, but the truth is that a time has come for Nigeria to actually leave this textbook and look at what works for us.
Yeah, practical.
The practical. The increment in MPR is not helping us. It hasn't helped for 3 years. Who is to tell you that it's going to help in the next 2 years or 4 years?
Absolutely.
It has not helped.
Absolutely.
The more you increase it, the more the inflation. So we need to look at the other underlying factors that are not stated in this textbook.
Not look as if we're actually joining the bandwagon.
Exactly.
Look at what is happening in the world.
I think that we needed to do more in bringing the monies outside of the banking system or the financial system back into the financial system. The idea of the cash swap policy was great. The implementation was poor. The planning was poor. And that has
do you think that is going to affect the banking culture? Because Nigeria is no longer depositing money.
People go to the banks and check their deposit reports. You will see that it has declined seriously. Because Nigerians are now feeling like, okay, what we suffered during that time. People are now building small votes in their houses, putting money back in boxes and wooden, all of those things.
Wooden boxes.
You have sort of made worse what you tried to solve. And that is simply because the CBN did not plan the implementation of that policy. It was a wonderful policy. I hailed it. I promoted it on every platform I was invited. But I kept mentioning one thing. We must be careful about implementation, because if we fail to succeed at the implementation, the impact, the backfiring effect is going to be so harsh on us. And that is what you're seeing. And I guarantee you almost 90% that this MPR will do nothing about the interest rate.
Absolutely.
The inflation.
Mr. Wilson, let's quickly go to GDP. Let's talk GDP. The numbers was also were released yesterday by NBS, and we grew by to about 2.31%. It's actually a decline growth if you compare it to the Q4 of 2022. So what do you think is responsible for this slow growth that we are experiencing at this point?
You know, GDP itself measures the total amount of productivity happening in the economy. One of the things we think at the surface area that is affecting it, there have been so much focus on election in the last few months. And so nobody talked about businesses, nobody funds, any government programs that were on before were brought to a halt. This will only pick up when the new administration gets into the office.
Let's look on the screen now. Let's look at the performance of the non-oil sector there. 93.79%, oil sector 6.21%, and of course, if you look at the breakdown, service sector contributed 57.29%. Agriculture is really down, 0.90%. Of course, industry 0.31, manufacturing 10.13, trade 12.28, and of course, finance and insurance 5.35. I'm worried about agricultural sector contribution.
Yeah, but it's obvious. This administration said it was going to invest in agriculture, you know, ramp up agricultural production.
And they created a lot of programs.
But there was insecurity on the other side. Insecurity destroyed everything that has been achieved in the area of agriculture, because people could no longer go to farm. And what use is it? The anchor borrowers program will fail if the man cannot go to his farm. We have banditry, terrorists, and all of that, kidnapping. So all these things truncated any improvement that agriculture would have enjoyed. So the new administration if they ever want to make any impact or growth in the area of agriculture and its contribution to the GDP, we have to fix the issue of security. We have to fix it. Until you do that, there's not much you can do about agriculture. And then I have always been crying about this. We need to fix the issue of land tenure system. We need to fix that. If land tenure system is not fixed, we will always have what we call peasant kind of farming. You have one small piece of land, half of a hectare or quarter of a hectare, and you cannot mechanize it. And until you achieve mechanization, you can't bring efficiency to production.
Absolutely.
We have also talked about issues of input, particularly improved seedlings. There is nothing you can do without improved seedling in agriculture. People will produce, but at a very high cost that you cannot even compete in the international market. That is why you see complaint today that the government say, oh, we have achieved self-sufficiency in rice production. Yet the price of 50 kg of rice is way above what it used to be when we import. Yes, the truth is that even if you import today from the Asia countries, you can sell at a price below the cost of production in Nigeria, and you will still make profit. Why? Those countries have perfected rice production. They have gone to mechanization. Yes, they have improved seeds. Yes. They have other things that helps them to do it well. They have proper subsidy implementation in their countries and government support, good platforms from where they can launch. Over here, our rice is just doing about 1.5 tons per hectare, 2.5 is great yield. Elsewhere, they are doing 6, 7, 8.
Absolutely.
Because they have research into seedlings and all of that. So
more investment.
These are more fundamental and basic issues to agriculture that we are yet to address. So that is what you are seeing in figure over there.
Absolutely. Not so impressive there with agricultural contribution to GDP in Q1 of 2023. Now let's look at some of the reasons NBS also gave. They say the decline is in GDP is as a result of the cash crunch experienced earlier in the year. They also see that as a reason.
Yes, definitely it would. And we mentioned that too during the cash crunch. And that is why in the run-up to the launching of that policy, I said that the CBN must be very careful in that policy because if it fails, you will see the backlash. And this is what we are seeing now. Most Nigerian companies, businesses rely solely on hard cash. You buy in cash, you pay in cash, and all of that. But once we didn't have cash, a lot of businesses almost packed up. Like for me, what I was doing during the time...
So in other words, we are not ready for cashless policy.
We are ready. There's never going to be a time that will be 100% ready. But there's a proper...
But given the experience that we've had...
do you
see any sign of readiness?
What happened?
Because Nigerians really went through a lot.
Yes, we went through a lot, and what happened was the political interference. You know, give a dog a bad name so that you can kill it.
Yes.
You know, some politician brought that into the equation. And this is because the CBN did not factor in the political effect and influence of that policy. So, and that's what you saw. But if this was properly planned, it would have gone without notice. And the positive implication is that we'll now have all these monies that are imports and K2 in the bank, available for you and I to go and borrow and do business, return it. Maybe the bank can even hire more hands. You know, so this is what would have happened. But because it was not properly planned, we had the e-Naira launched. What did the CBN do about e-Naira? I expected the CBN to send people to junctions where there are bike people, Okada, teach them how to set up their e-Naira platform and use it to receive payment. Go to the market women, set up people there, teach them how to use the e-Naira. Go to taxi driver, teach them how to use it. These are the people that use cash every day.
Absolutely.
So if you can lift a lot of them.
We have a long way to go. But just before we go, let's look at the non-oil sector, oil sector contribution, only 6.21% to GDP. But in terms of revenue, it contributes over 90% of our revenue. So I'm worried about this discrepancies in terms of the contribution to GDP and that of the revenue? We earn more revenue from oil.
Yeah, but the activities that give you the revenue are not mostly here. You just tap crude oil from the ground and then take it to the market abroad. So that is your revenue.
The end product.
Yes. But with refineries coming up now, then you can have more economic activities within your country from that sector. So there are two different things.
Absolutely, and that may probably increase the contribution of the oil sector.
To the,
absolutely. That's impressive there. I think Nigerians who have asked several questions about this will probably understand why the oil sector, despite the uniqueness or how reliable the revenue has been for Nigeria for a long time, is contributing less and less to the GDP. Finally, before we wrap up this discussion, let's look at what do you think that the incoming government would do? Because in about 4 days from now, we'll have a new government in place. So with this kind of economic indices, economic numbers, how worried or how concerned do you think this incoming government should be?
Well, I know it's the same party, and thankfully, the president-elect was and maybe still is the leader of the APC. So he's a part and parcel of this outgoing administration. So he has more information, I believe, than you and I even have. So, and for him to be confident that he's going to make impact, I believe he's going to make some impact. And I believe that he's already putting his team together. So let's wait and see what he brings to the table. Let's pray for a better Nigeria.
Absolutely. Indeed, we need a better Nigeria for all of us. Wilson Agaba, business consultant and public affairs analyst. I must thank you for your time. We're totally out of time. I must thank you for coming on Business Daily.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And with that, it's a wrap on Business Daily today. Join us again tomorrow for another interesting edition. I am Yusuf Akogo. Bye for now.